listening or watching Radio Afinju. The time is 6 p.m.
Ẹ bá mi pè o. Àfíjù. Kí lorúkọ rẹ̀? Àfíjù. Rédíò. Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń wo Àfíjù. Lórí WhatsApp. Àfíjù. Instagram. Àfíjù. Facebook. Àfíjù. Lórí X. Àfíjù. Lórí YouTube. Àfíjù. Lórí TikTok. Àfíjù. Kí lorúkọ rẹ̀? Àfíjù. Ẹ bá mi pè o. Àfíjù. Rédíò. Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń wo Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń gbọ́ Àfíjù. Gbogbo èèyàn ló ń wo Àfíjù. Rédíò Àfíjù. Rédíò Àfíjù. Rédíò Àfíjù.
Stay informed with news on Radio Afinju.
First, a look at the highlights. Tinubu hosts Wike FCT delegation at Aso Villa. Sudan's paramilitary RSF chief says war with army is not over. Trump says he couldn't care less about higher car prices. Good evening and welcome to the World News on Radio Afinju. My name is Pearl Durotoye. The news in detail. President Bola Tinubu hosted guests for the Eid al-Fitr homage at the Presidential Banquet Hall, State House, Abuja. Today's meeting began at 12:16 p.m. when the president arrived at the venue. The guests include some lawmakers representing the Federal Capital Territory at the National Assembly, area councils chairpersons of the Federal Capital Territory, traditional rulers, leaders of the Christian and Muslim community, senior judicial officers, among others. The opening prayers were said by the chairman of the FCT chapter of the Christian Association of Nigeria, Timothy Amazon, and the Mashir of the National Mosque, SAS Galadinsi. The Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, who led the delegation, gave the opening remarks followed by the presentation of cards by the guests to the president. Seated while Vice President Kashim Shatima, the National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribado, and the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris. Edo State Governor Monday Okwebolo has suspended the activities of all vigilante groups following the lynching of travelers in Uromi, Eson Northeast local government area of the state. In a statement issued by the Secretary to the state government, Umar Musa Ikilo, the governor also suspended the commander of the Edo State Security Corps, Friday Ibadan, retired. Ikilo disclosed that the vigilante group responsible for the tragic killings on March 27th operated illegally as it was neither registered nor profiled under the Edo State Security Corps. corpse. He said there were ongoing investigations into the killings with 14 arrests made so far and an intensive manhunt underway for others involved, led by a special team assigned by the Inspector General of Police. Ikilo also disclosed that the government was in contact with the victims' families, community leaders and the Kano state government, as most of the deceased were reported to be from Kano. He urged all stakeholders to remain calm, assuring them that the state government was committed to ensuring justice was served swiftly, transparently and effectively. The Nigeria Deposit Insurance Corporation has announced that the first tranche of liquidation dividends for uninsured depositors of the defunct Heritage Bank will be declared in April 2025. The disclosure was made in a press statement released by the acting head of communication and public affairs, Hawao Gambo, today. According to the statement, the declaration of the first tranche of liquidation dividends in April will be followed by the payment to uninsured depositors. The NDIC stated that the payment will be made on a pro rata basis in line with Section 72 of the NDIC Act 2023, which prioritizes the settlement of deposit liabilities over other liabilities when an insured institution fails. Tragedy struck along the Malumfashi-Kafar Road in Katsina State this morning as a lone Hummer bus accident resulted in the death of 9 passengers. Preliminary investigation has identified speeding and loss of control as the primary factors in the crash. Motorists have been cautioned by the FRSC commander to exercise extreme care and refrain from speeding, overloading and reckless driving, particularly during festive periods. Considering the potential for increased traffic during festive periods, the FRSC commander implored motorists to prioritize safety by exercising extreme care and refrain from speeding, overloading and reckless driving. Mahaji pointed out that despite improved roads infrastructure in Katsina, reckless driving continued to be a major cause of fatal accidents. Away from Nigeria, the leader of Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, said today that his war against the army was not over and his forces would return to Khartoum despite being largely driven out of the capital. It was Dagalo's first comment since the RSF were pushed back from most parts of Khartoum last week by the army in the latest development in Sudan's devastating 2-year-old war. Dagalo, also known as Hemedti, conceded in an audio message on Telegram that his forces had left the capital last week as the army consolidated its gains. However, he vowed to return to Khartoum stronger, more powerful and victorious. His comments came as the army continued to consolidate, taking control on Saturday of a major market in Omdurman, Khartoum's twin city, which had previously been used by the RSF to launch attacks. In Asia, a 56-year-old man is being investigated in South Korea on suspicion of starting a deadly wildfire that killed 30 people. The man, who has not been named, was performing an ancestral rite by a family grave on a hill in Uiseong County, North Gyeongsang Province at the time. He has been booked but not arrested and will be called in for questioning once the investigation of the site has been completed. He denies the charges. Earlier today, officials said the main fires had finally been brought under complete control 10 days after they started, causing widespread damage to buildings, including historic temples. Investigators reportedly spoke to the suspect's daughter, who is said to have told them the fire began as a father tried to burn tree branches hanging over the graves with a cigarette lighter. According to the Korea Forest Service, the fires burned more than 48,000 hectares, equivalent to about 80,000 80% of the size of the capital, Seoul. They also destroyed an estimated 4,000 structures, including homes, factories, and a number of national treasures. Rescuers are desperately searching for survivors more than 2 days after a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck Myanmar, toppling buildings as far away as the Thai capital, Bangkok, and sending tremors through nearby Chinese provinces. At least 1,700 people now confirmed dead in Myanmar after what was the largest earthquake to hit the war-ravaged country in more than a century. Experts fear the true death toll could take weeks to emerge. Widespread damage has been reported after the quake triggered bridges and buildings to collapse, including in Bangkok, where authorities are trying to free dozens believed to be trapped under the rubble of an under-construction high-rise. In Europe, a Russian drone strike on Ukraine's second-largest city killed 2 people and wounded 35 late on Saturday, officials said, as President Volodymyr Zelensky urged Kyiv's partners to respond to such attacks while seeking peace in the 3-year-old war. The strike on the eastern city of Kharkiv, which damaged a military hospital among other structures, came as Ukraine seeks strong backing from Western allies to pressure Russia into ending its full-scale invasion of its smaller neighbor. Mayor Ihor Terekov said 5 children were wounded in the attack, which also damaged several dozen residential buildings and a dormitory housing war refugees. One survivor, who identified himself as Anton, described running to an adjacent room in his apartment when a drone struck and showered him with shrapnel. Still in Europe, the Danish foreign minister on Saturday scolded the Trump administration for its tone in criticizing Denmark and Greenland, saying his country is already investing more into the Arctic security and remains open to more cooperation with the United States. Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen made the remarks in a video posted to social media after Vice President J.D. Vance's visit to the strategic island.
I have a message for our American friends and all others who are listening. Much is being said these days. Many accusations and many allegations have been made. And of course, we are open to criticism. But let me be completely honest. We do not appreciate the tone in which it's being delivered. We respect that the United States needs a greater military presence in Greenland, as Vice President Vance mentioned this evening. We, Denmark and Greenland, are very much open to discussing this with you, with an open mind. Today, NATO's security guarantee also covers Greenland. But we very much welcome if NATO and allies would play a greater role in the Arctic. We will shoulder our share of the responsibility. No one should doubt that. I am pleased that the Vice President today emphasized the right of the Greenlandic people to determine their own future. This is important. Just a few hours ago, a new Greenlandic government took office with strong support from the population and a strong desire to develop the Greenlandic society in close collaboration with Denmark and with the Danish government. We look forward to embarking on this work.
Vance on Friday had said Denmark had underinvested in Greenland's security and demanded that Denmark change its approach as President Donald Trump pushes to take over the Danish territory.
Our message to Denmark is very simple. You have not done a good job by the people of Greenland. That has to change. And because it hasn't changed, this is why President Trump's policy in Greenland is what it is.
Vance visited U.S. troops on Pitufik Space Base on mineral-rich Greenland alongside his wife and other senior U.S. officials for a trip that was ultimately scaled back after an uproar among Greenlanders and Danes who were not consulted about the original itinerary. Vance said the U.S. had no option but to take a significant position to ensure the security of Greenland as he encouraged the push in Greenland for independence from Denmark. In the Americas, Donald Trump has said he couldn't care less if car makers raise prices after his 25% tariffs on foreign-made vehicles comes into effect. Some analysts have warned that Trump's charges on businesses importing vehicles could lead to the temporary shutdown of significant car production in the United States, increase prices, and strain relations with allies. But speaking to newsmen on Saturday, the U.S. president said he hoped foreign car makers raise prices as it means people are going to buy American-made cars. On Wednesday, Trump announced new import taxes of 25% on cars and car parts entering the United States from overseas, which go into effect on 2nd April. Charges on businesses importing vehicles are expected on 3rd April, and taxes on parts are set to start in May or later. Hollywood actor Richard Chamberlain, best known for his role in the 1960s medical drama Dr. Kildare and leading role in Shogun, has died aged 90, his publicist has confirmed to reporters. Chamberlain earned the title King of the Mini-Series for his leading roles in Shogun and The Thornbirds. His publicist, Alan Ball, confirmed he died late on Saturday night local time in Waimanalo, Hawaii, after suffering complications from a stroke just hours before he would have turned 91. Martin Rabbit, Chamberlain's longtime partner, called him an amazing and loving soul in a statement. In the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will travel to Hungary this week, his office said earlier today, defying an arrest warrant from the International Criminal Court issued over allegations of war crimes in Gaza. During the visit, due to begin on Wednesday and run until Sunday, Netanyahu will meet his Hungarian counterpart Viktor Orban, who invited him in November, soon after the ICC issued the arrest warrant. Orban said at the time that the warrant would not be observed. All European Union member states, including Hungary, are members of the ICC, which means they are required to enforce its warrants. Orban, a right-wing nationalist, has often been at odds with the European Union over democratic standards and human rights in Hungary. There was no immediate comment by Hungary about this week's visit. It will be Netanyahu's second trip abroad since the ICC announced the warrant following a visit to Washington in February to meet U.S. President Donald Trump. Still in the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu repeated a demand today for Hamas to disarm and for its leaders to leave Gaza as they promised to step up pressure on the group while continuing efforts to return hostages. He said Israel would work to implement U.S. President Donald Trump's voluntary emigration plan for Gaza and said his cabinet had agreed to keep pressuring Hamas, which says it has agreed to a ceasefire proposal from mediators Egypt and Qatar. Netanyahu rejected assertions that Israel, which has resumed its bombardment of Gaza after a 2-month truce and sent troops back into the enclave, was not negotiating. Now talking sports, Arsenal have appointed Italian Andrea Berta as new sporting director after his 12-year stint at Atletico Madrid. The Premier League club said today, replacing Brazilian Edu after his resignation last year. During his time with Atleti as technical, then sporting director, Berta played a major role in shaping squads that clinched the La Liga title for the first time in 18 years when they won in 2013 to 2014 and again in 2020 to 2021. The club also reached 2 Champions League finals and won the Europa League title in 2018. Bayern Munich defender Hiroki Ito suffered a broken metatarsal bone in his right foot for the second time in less than a year, just weeks after his comeback from the first injury, the Bundesliga leader said today. Ito, who broke his metatarsal back in July after arriving in Munich and only came back last month, was brought on in the 58th minute in Saturday's 3-2 win over St. Pauli, but was injured late in the game. He is the third defender ruled out in past days following the injuries of Dayot Upamecano and Alphonso Davies while on international duty just over a week ago. Bayern, who led the Bundesliga title race with a 6-point advantage and 7 matches remaining, face Inter Milan in the Champions League quarter-final first leg on April 8. Before we go, here again are the highlights. President Bola Tinubu hosted guests for the Eid al-Fitr homage at the Presidential Banquet Hall, State House, Abuja. Among the guests were Vice President Kashim Shettima, the National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribado, and the Minister of Information and National Orientation Mohammed Idris. Elsewhere, the leader of Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces, Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, said today that his war against the army was not over and his forces would return to Khartoum despite being largely driven out of the capital. And in the Americas, Donald Trump has said he couldn't care less if car makers raise prices after his 25% tariffs on foreign-made vehicles comes into effect. That was the world news on Radio Afinju. To view our channel, please follow Radio Afinju on Facebook, X, and YouTube. My name is Pearl Durotoye. Thanks for listening. Good evening.
When heavy rain begin fall and plenty water full everywhere, dey alert my people, shine your eyes as e dey happen for other places e fit reach your side.
Má ṣe da ìdọ̀tí sójú àgbàrá, gbé ilẹ̀ rẹ fún àwọn ọkọ̀ akólẹ̀.
No go put yourself for danger dey waka for flooded roads.
Gbọ́ o, ǹjẹ́ tó bá rí ẹnikẹ́ni tó hùwà tó lòdì sí òfin àmójútó ìdọ̀tí àti ẹ̀gbin, ẹ fi tó àwọn aláṣẹ létí. Report to the nearest authorities.
Má ṣe da ìdọ̀tí sójú àgbàrá.
Ìlera lọ́rọ̀. This awareness is brought to you by Radio